I feel like I am so much more in control than I was working for companies. I went through 10 years of really unemployment and underemployment, and that was really frustrating. I did not feel like I had any control at all. There were two different companies where I was working at those companies, and all of a sudden one day I walked in and they said, guess what? You're not needed anymore. And that's a huge shock to you. What do you do if you're not prepared for that? And honestly, in both of those cases, I was not prepared for that.
Welcome to Behind Their Success. This podcast is for people who are feeling stuck on their entrepreneur journey or in their careers. It's for people who want to scale and grow their businesses, learn about the power of mindset, or they just know there's more out there and they want to start making changes. I'm Peyton Squires, the host of the podcast. I was never cut out to be an employee, and when I was an employee, I was bored out of my mind. So I made a plan. I studied and passed the CPA exam in 8 months while working, all with the end goal in mind of quitting my job and starting my own business. I did that in 2014, and it's been an amazing wild ride since. So now let's hear from other entrepreneurs and what mindsets, and probably more important, what actions they have taken that have created and led to their success.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Behind Their Success podcast. I am Peyton Squires, the host, and today we have on Duane McHodgkins. Duane has, in 2010, started an IT company. He has grown that business and has recently come out with a couple books as well. Duane?
Thanks, Peyton. It's great to be here.
Yeah, Duane, give us a little bit of your background, where you come from and how you got where you are today.
Yes, my long-term background, I was not in IT. I was actually in sales and sales management. And I just got to the point where I was tired of it. And at one point I had a job where I was traveling 5 days a week, just about every week. That got really tiring. And I finally got out of that job into a job that got me home. But that ended up being a route sales job. I was working for Hostess, which I was in my mid-40s going, you know what? This job is getting harder and harder on my body. I don't think I can do this until I'm 65 or something like that. Very excited to make a change. And in a conversation with my wife one day, she said, you've been helping friends and family with their computers for a long time. What about doing that? And that was just like, boom. Oh, wow, that's a great idea. So started looking into it, was planning to do some classes at a community college. Timing wasn't right for that. So I just went and got the books and taught myself. So fast forward 10 years later, best decision I ever made. About 2 years into it, I was having a conversation with my teenage son, and he said, Dad, you're not nearly as grouchy as you used to be.
Wow.
So I took that as a sign that, yeah, I think I'm doing the right thing here.
Yeah, that's cool. You didn't really see a future or what have you right at the job, or at least not a long-time future. Yeah. How hard was that decision or I guess how scary was that decision to jump out and do your own thing?
Well, the decision was made for me. I started with Hostess like in 2008 or 9, something like that. And when I decided to do this business, my goal was I was going to do it on the side until about 2015. I figured by 2015, I would have enough built up where I could just quit my job. At the end of 2012, Hostess filed for bankruptcy and shut their doors. And that,
remember?
they were, the company shut down completely. And then about 6-8 months later, someone bought the assets and kind of brought the company back. But
yeah, the brands are worth something.
Yeah. And so when they shut down, I kind of looked at it and I'm going, okay, so do I try to find another job that'll hopefully work out as well as that one did timing wise? Because running a route, I was going in really early, 2:00 in the morning. And so I was done by noon. So I would have the afternoons and the evenings to work my business. And I'm thinking, will I find something that's going to work that well going forward? And I wasn't sure I would. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. I didn't have enough customers to support myself at that point. But you know what? When you are behind the 8 ball, you will do what you need to do.
Man, that's so true. I find that it's amazing what gets accomplished when it has to be accomplished, right? When you have no other choice. You can usually go a whole lot further than you certainly think you can when you have to.
Yeah, when there is no room for error, you will have less errors.
So the business has been running since roughly 2010.
Yeah.
You know, I know you've got into some different ventures and some writing and stuff. What got you there?
So when I started building my business, I had no money, right? I was scraping to survive. So I couldn't throw a bunch of money at advertising or anything like that. So I went the free route, which was networking. So I went on Meetup actually and started looking for networking groups that were in my area, found some groups, and that's a hard thing to start doing because you're going to just show up. You don't know anybody, and come to find out, it's not an overnight thing. It takes time. One of the things that people always talk about in networking, that people like to do business with people they know and trust. Well, it takes a while to build that know, like, and trust. But it worked out great, and that's the main way that I gain new customers today. So it worked out well. But along the way, many of those business owners that I was networking with became real good friends. And then COVID comes along, and my business, I did fantastic during COVID. I was one of those deemed essential. Yeah. So it was great. But so many of my friends, their businesses were not deemed essential and they weren't able to go to the office, or they weren't able to really do their business. So I had a lot of friends that were suffering. And in driving around, I would occasionally see a business that had figured it out. They had pivoted, they found a new way to do business. One of the real telling things was there was a brewery that I had driven by, and they had put up platforms in their parking lot and attached fishing tents to them, ice fishing tents. So now you could be inside but outside. That whole
It all works, right?
they were able to stay in business. There's a restaurant in Parker where I live. They had 50 of those ice fishing tents. And it's the neatest. There was a picture someone had taken from the roof of the building where you could see all these, and that enabled them to continue serving. So I just started seeing those kinds of things. I started making note of those. And one day the phrase business heroes of the pandemic hit me. And I was like, okay, I started writing down these ideas. And I think I was probably 4,000 words in when I decided, wow, this could actually be a book. And so I did a couple things at that point. I decided, okay, every morning I'm going to get up and I'm going to spend some time writing this and trying to get this done. I didn't know how many words I needed for a book at that point. I do now. The books that I write, they end up being around 150 pages, and I can get to that point in about 30,000 words. So now I have a little bit of okay, I know kind of what I need to do. Didn't know at that time. But anyway, I told everybody that I ran into that I was writing a book. And that did two things for me. So first off, that kind of put the peer pressure on me, because I know the next time I see that person, they're going to say, so how's the book coming? And I don't want to be the guy that says, oh, well, I gave up on that. So no, I was forcing myself to continue doing this. The other thing that did, when I told them what it was about, there were people that said, oh, you should talk to this person, or you need to meet this person. What they did is really cool. So that gave me more stories to add to the book. And it also led me down the path to finding the people that actually helped me put it all together. Because I had no clue how you get a book on Amazon or any of that stuff. There are a lot of people, they do that for a living. So I'm all about, let's find people that know what they're doing instead of trying to do it all myself.
Yeah. And to back up, I guess, a little bit, you're talking about even just starting out your company, was that you said you didn't have any money, right? And that's most people, right? When they're quitting or starting a business, like, you're broke, or you certainly don't have enough money to go do a bunch of marketing or what have you. So, like, you have two choices in the beginning, right? It's either time or money, right? You didn't have money, but you had excess time, right? And then you invested in that networking piece. And me, similar story. I started my practice out of my living room, broke. Or just, I don't say broke, but just quit my job. And I networked the heck out of it. That's the only thing I knew. Hey, this is a positive thing to do. It's going to help. But you're right. It was 2 to 3 years down the road before you really start to see the seeds of that actually start to sprout.
Yeah. And that's another thing that I did. So there were more mornings where I woke up wondering what I was going to do today. So what I did is I created a spreadsheet, and I actually called this spreadsheet Seeds, taking from Robert Louis Stevenson. And so what I would do is, okay, if I wake up this morning and I've got customers to go to, great, I'm going to go deal with those customers. If I don't, I'm going to open up my spreadsheet. And this spreadsheet, it was basically 12 pages. It was a calendar for an entire year. And across the top, I had every day of the month. And going down the side, I had different things that I could do to move my business forward. So if I don't have a customer, then I look at that and I'm going, okay, what can I do right now to move my business forward? And I would do those things and I would make a note on the spreadsheet that I did it. Okay, now if that turned into something, then I would highlight it. So I could actually go back and I could see, look, I did these things. They came to fruition. They brought me business. This is fantastic. And I kept that up for probably the first 3 years of my business till I got to the point where, you know what, I don't have time to do this anymore. Yeah. But then it was all habits. So if I wake up and I don't have anything going on, I do have a list of things right here that I can do to move me forward. So
that's amazing. And there's a couple points there. And to go back, I could read the Robert Louis Stevenson. It says, don't judge each day by the harvest you reap, but by the seeds that you plant.
Yes, there it is.
I mean, that's so true. And like, I can already tell by talking to you and just meeting you today that the organization you put around that, the thought you put around that, not a lot of people do that and are not necessarily connecting today's actions with tomorrow's results, right? Like everything is delayed, right? Nothing is like instant. Yeah. And where people begin their business in the beginning, they start planting some of these seeds and show up the next day and wonder why there isn't like a cornfield there. That's just not reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Duane, what would you say is your number one skill, or what has led to your ability to grow your business and be successful?
Probably the first thing is to just go out there and do it. Keep a positive attitude. As a person, I'm a scorekeeper. Okay. And I know this about myself. So I built in a lot of different things where I could keep score to prove to myself that I'm moving forward. And that's what motivates me. So
you gamify it, right? Yes. Like you almost turned it into a game and you keep getting little rewards.
Exactly. Exactly. And I found out what works for me, and that's what I've done during COVID. And this was in my first book, Lessons from the Business Start of the Pandemic. I talked about the fact that a lot of people that were sidelined, they would get up in the morning, or maybe not get up in the morning, leave their pajamas on, go sit in front of the TV and just binge some shows on Netflix or whatever. And when you do that, you're setting yourself up for failure. If you don't have anything going on, you get up, you get dressed, and you go through the motions as if you do have things going on, because you're creating habits. And when you create those habits, they become automatic and you just do them and you're ready to go. So that morning when you wake up and you do get that phone call that says, hey, I want you to do this, you're ready to go do that. But if you're not getting up, if you're just spending your time lounging around, you're not going to be ready for those things.
Yeah, that's so true. Thinking back on it, so I'm a CPA or CFP, so I do everything kind of tax and wealth, but that pandemic hit right in the middle of tax season, by the way. And it was such a shock. It was funny. I can go back to my calendar and go back and look at 2020 where like early March, there's no joke, I have 20 plus meetings a day. And in 20 plus meetings a day from February all the way to early March. And then you hit mid-March and there's nothing. It just stops all of it. So it was a really weird time, right? And I would say I'm much stronger now than I was then, but it was so easy to even creep into that where you talk about, okay, you got nothing to do. It's so easy to creep into other types of habits that aren't planting seeds or helping you down the road. Yeah. Everybody sat around and watched Tiger King and for weeks. And not a lot.
Yeah.
So what would you credit as the best decision you've ever made, Duane?
I think just deciding and then just doing this business, because my life is it's not less stressful. It's a different kind of stress. I feel like I am so much more in control than I was working for companies. I mean, prior to all of this, I went through 10 years of really unemployment and underemployment. And that was really frustrating. I did not feel like I had any control at all. There were two different companies where I was working at those companies, and all of a sudden one day I walked in and they said, guess what? You're not needed anymore. And that's a huge shock to you. And
Yeah, it's blown.
what do you do if you're not prepared for that? And honestly, in both of those cases, I was not prepared for that. And now, you know what? Okay, maybe I'm my own boss, or maybe I have 1,000 bosses. Either way, but the bottom line is, if one customer fires me today, that's okay, because I've got a lot of other customers. So that puts me more in control.
Very similar path where it's in the beginning, you're scraping and doing whatever, and you'll do about anything for anybody for a paycheck. And I did a lot of that. But as you grow your business, as you get more prepared, as you get more skillful, and this is going to sound bad, as in like where I say is like no one customer matters to my business. And of course they all matter. But what I'm getting at is I have control to do what I want because I don't necessarily need any.
Yeah. Now, I've made the mistake a couple different times in my business where I had what I called like the golden goose. This was a customer that ended up being 25, 30% of my business. And hey, that's fantastic because, boom, your business is growing.
Yeah.
It's great. But when you've got that much tied up in one customer, that can come to a stop real quick. And twice that happened to me. And it wasn't bad situations. In the first situation, it was basically, hey, things have changed in our business and we've got a lot of stuff going on. So we're bringing it in-house. The company had grown. When I started with them, they were like 15 people. They were a franchising company. And by the time they took it in-house, their customer service alone was probably 50 people. And they had over 100 franchisees around the country. So it really made sense for them to bring it in-house. So there was no real feelings other than the fact that I just lost 35% of my income.
Problems.
And that happened one other time to me. Since then, I've been real careful to not let anybody have that much control over my business. And that's the hard thing to do, right? Because what I've done is just try to make sure that there are other customers that are just as important financially as that customer, so that they're not that large of a percent of what I do. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And to circle back to your answer of like, the best decision you've made was just to kind of start. I give that same answer to that question, right? Like it's the best decision I ever made was to just quit my job and start. And somehow I was brave enough to do it at the time. And I don't know what it was. And I finally decided to do it. And it's amazing. A lot of people get stuck right there, right? They get stuck in the planning and thinking about it. And all of a sudden 5 years goes by and you still haven't necessarily done any of it. You just kind of start.
Yeah, I've ran into those people too. And I remember a guy I'd met at a networking event, and he said, yeah, I'm working on my business plan. I'm like, oh, okay, what are you planning to do? And he told me, and I'm like, okay, how long have you been? Well, I've been working on it for about 6 months. And I told him, I said, look, eventually you probably will need a business plan, especially if you're planning to make this a very large business and maybe sell it at some point. But to start a business, you have to sell something. Whether that's your product, your service, whatever it is, it's not a business until you sell something. And you can go back and you can put the structure in place, but until you sell something, it's an idea. It's just an idea.
Yeah, that's so true. It's so easy to get stuck in that. And I would assume a lot of that is fear, right? Like you just want to start and realize you can't do it, right? And another point is like, as a guy that's got a myriad of LLCs and owns all kinds of different types of business, I've never once written a business plan, like an official piece of paper saying, hey, this is what I'm going to do ever in my life. So it's, and of course you have no idea what to put in that business plan until you start actually doing stuff. Like you don't know what you're doing until you get in there and start bumping around and messing stuff up.
Yeah. it's good to have an idea of what you want to do, but a formal plan, it's going to change sometimes on a daily basis.
And I find that all the time too, and have these conversations with my wife or even other business partners. It's like, I don't even know why you try to plan like more than 3 months out. Like you got the big vision and the goal and okay, this is where we're going. But like tactically, the world changes so damn fast and different opportunities and what have you. Like you need your North Star and then you just got to pivot constantly, right? And how do I get to my North Star as, fast as possible?
It's like using GPS, right? So you take a wrong turn and what happens? Recalculating.
Like, oh man, I just cost myself a year. Wild stuff. Your best decision was getting started. Tell us about some, a bad decision or a mistake or something that you know now that you wish you would have known then. Learned a lesson from.
So there have been a few times where I've had someone call me and say, hey, we need someone to help us with this and whatever this is. And it's something that it's not necessarily in my wheelhouse. But man, it could be lucrative. This could be, pretty good customer. And there have been a couple times where I'll do it. It's not something I should be doing, and it's not ended well. And I've learned from that. And since then, and I think this is becoming more secure in yourself and your strengths and what you do, because, hopefully you get to a point in your business where, okay, I know who my customer is. And if you're not my customer, I'm going to tell you, I'm sorry, you're not my customer. Because you can't be everything to everybody. And it's hard to make those decisions sometimes, but boy, it makes your life so much easier once you decide, okay, this is where I work. This is what I do. I'm not going to do this stuff over here. So
I've learned or I've committed that mistake countless numbers of times, especially early, right? Like we go back to about early where you're like, hey, I just want to make some money. Who wants to give me some money for something?
Yeah.
But yes, as you develop, as you get more confidence, as you get more revenue and customers, you get very clear on who you work with, because if it's outside of that narrow lane, it's not efficient for you, right? It's not near as profitable necessarily for you, right? If I do this one thing over and over again and get really good at it, like it's super easy and quick for me and I know exactly what I'm doing and I'm super helpful to the client. I get out in this other world, I don't know what I'm doing. I got to figure it all out. I hope I'm doing the right thing for the client. Like all these different problems. And like I bid something or give a quote on something, I'm like, I don't really know if that's right or not because I really don't know what I'm getting into. There's a myriad of problems. And then you get your not ideal clients, right, and your client base. And it just creates a whole lot of inefficiencies and just honestly, just flat out distraction.
Yeah. You learn that the rule of 80-20 is so true. You get that one customer that they try to monopolize 80% of your time and you're not making any money off of them. But then you get those other customers that, they really appreciate what you do and you tell them what it's going to cost and they don't bat an eye. And you go, okay, I need to concentrate on those kind of customers and try to stay away from those ones that are they're going to nickel and dime you to death.
Yep.
Yeah.
And at my experience in just growing my business from a 24-year-old kid and is out of his own house to what it is today. Yeah. It's just, I guess what I look for in clients is almost quality of people at this point. If big, small, there's things I'll do for a lot of maybe small clients that someone would say, why are you doing that? But I see it as an investment in that person because I think that person's worth it.
Yeah.
It's that kind of me. It's right. Like I will invest time in some college kid or whatever that's trying to hustle and get his stuff and giving advice. Right. But if there's so many clients, like you said, the 80-20 and everybody tells you that like you would be better off to fire your bottom 20% of clients literally every year. Yeah. It's hard to do.
It is. Yeah. So when I started my business, another thing that I found was, so there's a service called Thumbtack. And it's kind of like Angie's List, those types of things. But when I started out, Thumbtack for a service provider was really inexpensive to do. And so I used that to get customers. And it's great because I would get a text message, hey, so-and-so is looking for this kind of help. And I could click the link, go into my phone, and I could put a quote together for them in a few seconds. And if I did that, I think it cost me something like $7-8 if I was able to get the quote to them, And those I'd win, some of them I wouldn't. More often than not, I did win them. But I had people that would come back on me and say, well, that seems kind of expensive. Will you do it for this? And I got to the point where I'm like, no, this is what I charge. Based on my experience and everything, this is what I charge. If you think it's too much, then good luck, but you've got my information if something changes. And guess what? A number of times, those people would come back to me and say, yeah, I went with the least expensive guy, and now I need some help because now I'm So, okay, great. That showed me that I'm on the right track here. I'm doing what I need to do. And but that's a really hard thing to do.
It's funny sometimes in similar experiences where it's like, oh, yes, the cheaper option is done. And then they come back to you and you got to go clean them.
Yeah. Well, what would have taken me an hour is now going to take me 3 hours. So
that quote actually went up. Let's say going back to 2010 or whenever, right, when you're starting, what piece of advice would you give yourself, right? What if you could tell yourself one thing about this journey going forward, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
There are things that I've discovered along the way, and I wish I knew those things when I started. A lot of this is in my first book, too, on how to remain essential. So what I discovered is in IT, there were a number of tools that I used that people would say, hey, what kind of antivirus should I use? What backup solutions should I use? And I was always quick to tell them, here's the best one. And I would help them get it on their computer and everything like that. And after a while, I kind of realized, you know what? I'm like the best unpaid salesman for these companies. Yeah. So I started looking into it, and the antivirus that I used, they had a great program. I was able to offer it for the exact same price they were offering it, but I was making like 30%. So it was fantastic. So now I'm actually getting paid. I'm not leaving money on the table. And then I had a couple companies that I did work for, and hey, do you guys have an affiliate program? Do you have a partner program? No, we don't have anything like that. I'm like, okay, no worries. But at that point, I would try to find another product that was similar, was as high a quality that I felt good about. And if I found one and they had a program, I'd switch to that one. By doing that, I found out that, okay, I'm not working as hard as I was before to make the same amount of money, which is great. I'm going to customers, and the customer isn't spending any more money, but I'm making more money. So that was a win. The company that's selling the product, they're winning because they're selling more because I'm more apt to sell it. They're getting a great product, and I'm supporting it, and I'm getting paid to do that. So everybody wins, and that's the kind of deals I like is the everybody wins. Yeah.
Heck yeah. Which truly, in every situation, you can find a win-win. Now, it can take some exploring, but in every situation, you can come to agreement and find a win. So, Duane, before we got on the podcast here, I heard you got a new book on Amazon. Dropping, was it today?
Actually, yesterday it dropped. Yeah. So which is always so much fun. It's weird because my first book, the day it launched, I was all over social media. This one, I really haven't done that much because I'm planning a launch party. And I want to wait till I have all the books in hand before I do that. So it'll probably be about a month out, but everybody knows that I've written it. And this book is a little different, but I think it's really right up there today with what's going on in the world. It's called The Higher Education Scam. And the second part of that is it's debunking the myth that everyone needs a college degree. And, it's really weird because as I talk to people, everybody agrees with me. But yet, collectively as a society, we're still putting that out that, okay, you're graduating from high school, and what's the first thing everybody says to you? Where are you going to college? And honestly, there are so many of us that really have no business going to college. I did high school for 3.5 years, and I realized that I had enough credits. I did not have to go that last semester. I'm out. I despised sitting in a classroom. It was not fun. It was not something that, it was a struggle for me to do that. And I know there's a lot of people like that. So Why would you encourage those people to spend that kind of money and that much time to further that education? There are so many other options, and there are good options.
Yeah. And, in especially in today's rapidly changing world, I'm about to turn 37. And, when I was in high school, I was basically told, you go to college or you're going to live under a bridge.
Yes.
And it's just not true in today's world. There's just so many different options. And the cost benefit analysis on college it's certainly getting worse.
Yes.
And the university system was designed, however long ago, but the whole idea was all these smart people came together and they had all this knowledge at this school to disseminate to everybody. They don't have any special knowledge that you can't find for free or very little cost on the internet. Yeah. And I promise you, the stuff you go and explore and self-learn is going to be way more valuable, way more important to you than necessarily just going to take some courses at college and checking a bunch of boxes.
Now, I will say this. I believe there are two types of degrees. Okay. And I'm not talking, Bachelor of Science, Bachelor of Arts. No, what I'm talking about, there are skills degrees. Okay, so if you want to be an accountant, you want to be an engineer, you want to be a doctor, you want to be a lawyer, and there's a number of other ones.
Just professional stuff.
They have programs in college that will teach you what you need to do those things. Okay, problem is, these other degrees, and a lot of these, they kind of fall under like the humanities type degrees and those types of things. I call those the soft skill degrees, and they come in every ethnic variety. So you could have Hispanic studies, Asian studies, whatever you want to do, they have those. And when you Google what kind of a job can I get with whatever it is studies, they all say the same thing, because I've done this on a number of them. And when you Google it, it comes up and says, you can get a job, or you can get a number of different jobs working with people with this kind of background. So they don't really teach you anything about any job. What they're teaching you is, this is how this culture works. It's not all that helpful. So what I've found in my research is, if you go and get one of these degrees, and the other amazing thing about the colleges is this: if you want to get an accounting degree, that's 120 credit hours. If you want to get a Russian literature degree, that's 120 hours. Engineering, 120 hours. Everything is 120 hours. So now let's talk about trade school. Okay. There are programs to become a truck driver, and they range from 3 weeks to maybe 6 months. They're at different schools. And when you leave that program, you get a certificate that basically says, we guarantee this person has gone through all the steps, has all the licenses, everything they need to be a truck driver. If you want to be, a cosmetologist, you want to cut people's hair, there's a program for that. And the majority of that program is hands-on actually doing it. And all of those programs, everybody takes the same classes. It's not like college where, I decided to take anthropology. I decided to take geography. There's a big difference in those. I think that if someone has a certificate, they go through a technical program, you can guarantee that they know what they're doing, and everybody that comes through that program will have the same education. Not so much with a 4-year degree.
I've had some of these kind of conversations with people on the podcast in the past. And as a guy that has all kinds of degrees and certifications from universities and colleges and whatever, I wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying. I even taught college for 5+ years.
Okay.
I totally agree. And I think the main issue is like the difference between like theory and practice.
Yes.
So much of that is taught, there's so much theory and whatever taught, and to me, it's like you go into a school to even go in to get a business degree. It's like, has anybody in that school ever operated a business for one day in their life? Like in reality, right? And there's this great quote I always talk about or share, whatever's from Yogi Berra, who's, an extremely quotable guy. He says, in theory, there is no difference between theory and practice. In practice, there is. Which is so true.
Yeah. Again, I'm not against higher education learning, it's just not for everybody. In the book, doing research for it, I discovered that general population of adults in the United States, 36% have a 4-year degree. That's all. So why are we pushing all these kids right out of high school to do that when most of us don't even have that?
Yeah, and even that, it's like the absolute lack of people in all the trades and different things where there's massive opportunity. And you brought up cosmetology. I have several cosmetologist clients that make a great living. I mean, a very good living doing what they do, running their own business and all these things that they probably got their certificate in, a few months at a hair school, but it gave them all the skills they needed to just take off and run. And certainly was a whole lot less than the 6 figures or whatever you're going to spend on a college degree.
Yeah. So my daughter, her goal from the time she was like in 2nd grade was to be a reporter. And she ended up going to college and getting a degree in broadcast journalism. She became a TV reporter. She did that for about 5 years.
Should have came to the University of Missouri. It's the #1 journalism school.
She went to, in Denver, there's a school called Metro, and it's in downtown Denver. Great school. It used to be more of a business person's school, but now it's a traditional university. But so she took all of her classes there, and they actually had a program that it was a club that this club, they called it Met Media for Metropolitan State University. But in this club, you could create radio shows and they would play on their public service radio. And they also did a 30-minute long newscast every Friday morning. And for 4 years, she was involved in this 30-minute newscast every week. She was an anchor, she was a reporter, she was a camera person. She produced it, she directed it, she did everything she could do in it.
How about
that? And so when she went to get her first job, she had been working in a newsroom for 4 years. She knew all of the industry acronyms and she was using the tools that they were using. She was doing all the things that they were doing. Could she have done it without that program? Yeah, she could have. But she would have had a much harder time. And in fact, her best friend that she met at her first job didn't have an opportunity to do something like that. And she really struggled her first year in the newsroom. Whereas my daughter, it was like, okay, I've been doing this for 4 or 5 years. Now, had my daughter not gone to college, but just got involved with club, she still could have done the job and she would have been fantastic at it. It needs to change. There's things where you don't need this sitting in classroom. She had to take anthropology and she had to take geology. It really has nothing to do with being a reporter.
Should never think about any of that stuff ever again.
No. So that's where I'm at with it. I would really like to see all of that change. And hopefully my book will get the conversation going more. And I'm encouraged by things I'm seeing out in the world. It seems like the tide is beginning to turn. So
that's awesome, Duane. Duane, appreciate you coming on. What's the best way people can connect with you?
Everything that I'm involved with is all on one page on the internet. And it is callduane.com. Callduane.com. Yeah. I was lucky enough to get that domain a few years ago, and it just, this is great.
So it's Duane spelled D-U-A-N.
Correct. Yes. There's links to all of my social media there. There's links to my first book. My second book, I haven't got it up there yet because I just got the link today. But on Amazon, if you just type in Duane McHodgkins, both of my books will come up. If you go to my first book, you can probably find my second book fairly easy that way too. So
it's awesome. Yeah. I would say time this podcast was released, guys, the books should be up there on Amazon and check out Duane. Well, Duane, like I said, I appreciate you coming on today. A fantastic conversation. And listeners, we will catch you next time.
Thanks, Peyton.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. If you found it valuable, please rate, review, and share it. That is the best way to help us build this and reach more people, as we're trying to accomplish our goal of help creating more healthy, wealthy, and wise entrepreneurs. You can follow us on social media by searching for me, Peyton Squires,
or going to paydensquires.com. On the website and social media, we're always sharing tips of personal growth, and there we can actually interact. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, guys.